kidneys are weaker, Renee wants to know if your kidneys are weaker, what is the best way to get these? So your kidneys being weak or strong really doesn't have a whole lot to do with your ability to take vitamin B5. I mean, the best way to get vitamin B5 at higher doses, aside from the foods I listed earlier, is supplementation. And so kind of generally a supplementation protocol, depending on, again, if you're going to do something like a high dose vitamin B5 regimen, I always encourage you to work with a good, well-trained doc in nutrition, somebody who's been trained in nutrition and knows what the heck they're doing. But kind of a lot of doctors will start out between 250 milligrams and 500 milligrams of pantothenic acid a day. That's not the 20 up to 20 grams of pantothenate that I was talking about here with the acne research and literature that's been being done. But this is just more for generalized nutritional support. So 250 to 500 milligrams, depending on the person. And then if the deficiency is severe enough, I've seen, where people respond really, really well to, to much more than that. 2,000 milligrams is kind of really good and effective strategy that I've seen work really, really well with a lot of people who come to see me. But again, if you're gonna get upwards of that 500 milligrams multiple times a day, my advice would be working with somebody who can help you understand how to do it right. And it is not that it's super rocket science, but you don't want to take so much. There's some other factors involved with taking too much vitamin B5, and one of those factors, which we didn't mention yet, so I'll go ahead and mention it, is that vitamin B5 and biotin that we believe are absorbed by the same type of mechanism inside the small intestine. And so if you're taking too much vitamin B5, like high doses for really long periods of time, one of the potentials is that you might cause a vitamin B9 deficiency, or not B9, but B, well, depends on which literature you read. It's biotin. Biotin is oftentimes referred to as vitamin B7. It's sometimes referred to as vitamin B8. But it's possible you induce a biotin deficiency when you're taking too much pantothenate, and vice versa. It's possible you induce a pantothenate deficiency if you're taking too much biotin, because of they going through on the same receptor site, so, or on the same mechanism of action of absorption in the intestine. So you want to be careful about just mega dosing everything just for the sake of mega dosing. Let's see here. RH wants to know how to get intracellular testing. Yeah, that is the best way. If you're talking about how do we test for B5 deficiency, intracellular testing is ask your doctor for what's called lymphocyte proliferation. It's a type of testing methodology that helps to understand what your nutritional status is. So lymphocyte is a type of white blood cell, and proliferation is a methodology that allows you to measure the growth rate of those white blood cells based on the quantity of nutritional storage inside those cells. And so it gives you an accurate indicator of whether or not you're deficient in that nutrient. And because a lymphocyte has a 6-month lifespan, instead of like a urine test or a blood test, it only gives you an indicator of yesterday's diet, which when you're testing for nutrient deficiencies, understand that testing yesterday's diet is a bad idea, because you may have eaten plenty of vitamin B5 yesterday, and you may have fasted yesterday. And it just depends on what you ate and what you did, and that test that you do, the standard tests are just going to show a direct reflection of your recent diet. We want something that gives you a long-term average. That 6-month average is more accurate. 6-month assessment. So it tells you kind of over time what your B5 levels have looked like and whether or not you're getting adequate quantities, enough to make your cells have the capacity to replicate and function. So very, very important that the right methodology is used if you're trying to really assess whether or not you have a deficiency. Okay, let's see here. Oh, yeah. So when you're taking, that's something else. Juan's wanting to know about seizure medications, anticholinergics, and vitamin B5. Yeah, so certain seizure medications, if you're on certain anti-dementia medications, if you're on tetracycline, which is a type of antibiotic, these things can all compete and interfere with each other. So it's important if you're on certain medications, if you're thinking about using vitamin B5, that you get with your doctor so that you know what you're doing, you don't create a problem. Oh, I love that. Somebody says, thanks for the meatball soup recipe. It was delicious. You're welcome. Hey, those of you who don't know, we put out about 8 recipes a month, and the way you can get access to those is either one, subscribing to me right here, or number 2, go over to glutenfreesociety.org, which is what I encourage you to do. It's our newsletter. It's the world's #1 gluten-free newsletter. with a couple 100,000 people subscribing to that newsletter. So it's one of the largest communities in the world that conglomerate together to discuss, how to go gluten-free in the proper way. Come visit us and come be a part of that community especially if you're trying to figure all this out. Let's see here. Are parasites a huge contributor? Dwayne wants to know, are parasites a huge contributor to people being anemic, being that they attach themselves in our gut, throat, and etc.? They can be. I mean, parasites in the United States, I know a lot of people will say parasites. I've seen a lot of doctors say parasite. Everybody has them. I haven't seen that to be the truth. I haven't seen that to be the case. And you have to be real careful about demonizing all parasites, because some parasites aren't really parasites. They're actually symbiotic microorganisms that live with us and actually do good things for us. So you kind of have to be careful about what you actually are calling a parasite. But yes, parasites can contribute to anemia, and they can contribute to a lot of people's anemia. But I would say, to what degree or how great, I don't think anybody really truly knows. So Mark wants to know, what can be used in a natural form to lower cholesterol? Mark, go watch my video, my crash course on cholesterol. I don't know if we can publish that link here in the feed for you or not, but you got to start from the premise of understanding what high cholesterol actually is, because many people try to lower their cholesterol and do so to their own detriment. And I don't want you to do something in that regard, or I don't want to lend you down the wrong road. So Vincent wants to know more info about acne. Yeah, we can do a whole show on acne. I'll do that, Vincent. Thanks for the tip. Can amoeba from India and companion bacteria eat up the B5? It's kind of a weird question, Rosie, not because it's weird, but amoeba can be a type of parasite. So in that regard, yeah, I mean, parasites growing in your intestine can cause vitamin and mineral deficiency. There's no doubt about that. Specifically, what kind of anemia? But then the other one is bacteria eat up the B5. Generally speaking, depends on what kind of bacteria too. If you've got bacterial infection, it's causing long-term chronic inflammation, and so you're taking a steroid and antibiotics and things of that nature repetitively over time, then yeah, you're going to churn through some B5. But you have to remember too that your good bacteria, we didn't talk about this, but one of the places you can get B5 aside from food is your gut. Your gut produces bacteria, and not produces bacteria, but your gut bacteria produce vitamin B5. So healthy flora, can synthesize some of the B5 for our needs. Now, the science isn't real clear on this. In other words, scientists don't yet agree, and researchers don't yet agree on exactly what quantity is that. 30% of your daily need, 40% of your daily need. The numbers aren't up and out yet, but we do know that gut flora can produce vitamin B5, and so that's something to think about when you're thinking about taking an antibiotic. It's something to think about when you have an infection, etc. Is it possible that intolerance to heat, besides burning feet, may be due to vitamin B5 deficiency? So intolerance to heat, as a general rule of thumb, I haven't seen that be the case. It doesn't mean it's not possible. There are a lot of strange things that happen in different people because of their own uniquenesses, their own unique biochemical differences. But I just personally, Marie, I've never seen that written about in relationship to other research on vitamin B5 deficiency. And I've never seen anybody clinically experience or report that kind of symptom to me as a result of being vitamin B5 deficient. So hopefully that's helpful for you. So intolerance to cold. So we're going both ends of the spectrum. So Vincent wants to know, what about intolerance to cold? Can intolerance to cold be a symptom of vitamin B5 deficiency? Look, intolerance to cold can be a symptom of a lot of different things. I'd say specifically the first thing that should be entertained with intolerance to cold should be all of your B vitamins, not just B5, because your B vitamins, it's not just B5 that helps you to generate energy from carbs, fats, and proteins. It's all the B vitamins, the whole family. So B vitamin deficiencies as a whole, as a family, can lead to that type of problem. So an alternative to beef liver would be chicken liver, Denise, or lamb, or any other animal that you might eat where you could get access to the liver. Okay. Yeah, any form of liver, the question's coming up repetitively over about whether or not liver is something that, aside from beef liver, might be a good source of B5. And yes, liver really from any animal is going to be a good source of B vitamins. Think of it like this. This is kind of a lesson I learned when I was in graduate school. My biochemistry teacher always said, the liver is the giver, meaning the liver stores the nutrients to give to the body in times of need. So that's one of the great things about the liver. A lot of people, give the liver a bad rap because it's the organ of detoxification. And so they think because it detoxifies, it is full of toxins. And that's not really true. The liver is full of nutrients so that it can detoxify. So I'd say liver from any animal would be adequate, provided the animal's health is solid. Okay. Oh, this is a question not really related to B5. Donna wants to know, why do legs cramp at night? Generally, if you've got nighttime leg cramping, look at calcium. Calcium deficiency is oftentimes present when people have nighttime cramps. So it might be just as simple as a few calcium pills to help those go away. But there are certainly other causes of cramps that you should visit your doctor with and see if they can help you to determine that. Burning fingers. So burning fingers, yes, burning neuropathy doesn't have to just be the feet. It's just that's where it tends to show up first. So burning fingers, burning hands can also be a symptom of vitamin B5 deficiency. Let's see. Andrea wants to know how to keep her sodium up. So that's kind of a specific question, Andrea. I'd need a lot more detail to really get that with you. My advice to you, if you're having trouble with low sodium because of your seizure medication, I'd really ask a deeper question. Why are you having seizures? And that goes with any medication. Generally speaking, when you go to the doctor, and again, generally speaking, when you go to the doctor says you have X, Y, or Z disease, gives you a diagnosis, and then makes a recommendation of either some type of medical intervention. Typically, that's a medication. And so I'm not really a fan of that methodology, because if you identify a disease but you don't identify why the disease exists, then the medication doesn't solve your problem. The medication just biochemically alters your symptoms. And so really, when it comes to seizure disorder, I have seen this repetitively, and I would encourage you to investigate this, is gluten. If you've got any form of autoimmune disease and you haven't been tested for gluten sensitivity, you need to ask your doctor to test you. And the key here is not any test. You want genetic testing. And if your doctor won't do it, you can go through Gluten-Free Society. We actually, my foundation has the ability to help people get access to that type of test, because that is a big problem, is a lot of doctors just won't run it. But epilepsy, seizure disorder, highly correlated and linked to gluten, meaning that it can be caused by gluten sensitivity. And so no amount of anti-epileptic seizure medication is going to fix that if you don't change your diet. So that's what I would suggest that you really look into, Andrea. Okay. So you wants to know low cortisol throughout the day and Raynaud's phenomena or Raynaud's syndrome. A functional coach put me on B5. How much and for how long should I take it? Look, that's too deep of a question for me to answer. I mean, remember, this show's not about me giving you medical advice. This show's about me answering, more simple questions. I can't go in and answer individual one-on-one questions. I don't have a history about you. I don't really know much about you other than you've tuned in a number of Monday nights. So really the best way to do that would either be call my office to set up a consultation if you want to kind of do a deep dive, or to get with your regular doc and ask that question. Is B5 essential for cardiovascular health? It depends on who you ask. So again, as I was saying earlier, B5 is being used as pantothene to lower cholesterol in people with high cholesterol. But again, it depends on what you perceive to be as high or low cholesterol. So is it necessary for heart health? I would argue that it is not, but not so much for this reason, so much as it is for all these other reasons, right? Cholesterol is healthy. We need a healthy level of cholesterol to keep our blood vessels healthy. We need to be able to produce antibodies to protect us from infection. And some kinds of infections can attack the heart, the pericardium of the heart, leading to cardiomyopathies. And so in that regard, it's helpful for heart health. Any inflammation, it's helpful for heart health. Generating energy. Remember, your heart consumes vast quantities of energy because it beats even when you sleep. And so, yes, it's very, very important for heart health. But vitamin B5 deficiency doesn't tend to manifest as heart disease. So hopefully that's helpful in answering your question. All right, David, welcome. Glad to see you here, and welcome from Phoenix, Arizona. So Juan says, my body can't produce creatine, accumulates guanidino acetate. Any tips? You need to get with a functional medicine practitioner and have some deeper levels of testing done. That's a pretty complex biochemical question, Juan. Okay. What about, Louise wants to know, what if you already produce too much cortisol to the point of feeling tense and anxious almost constantly? I would say if you're producing too much, you have to ask the question, why? Most people don't produce too much cortisol. Well, you can, but most people are being overstimulated. So cortisol is not something that generally your body breaks, and so you're making too much of it. It's usually you're making more cortisol. So cortisol elevates. Cortisol goes up from stimuli. So what are the stimuli that are causing your cortisol to increase? You know, most people that have elevations in cortisol have elevations in inflammation. And so their body's natural cortisol production is ramping up to try to protect them from themselves. Because most inflammation that I see in people is either food-induced or lifestyle-induced. So it could be stress, it could be the wrong diet, it could be a lack of sleep, it could be lack of exercise. So there's a whole, battery of things that you have control over that if you're not controlling adequately, your cortisol levels are going to go up. And somebody might perceive that as hypercortisolemia, which and if they're doing that, then they may use a medical intervention or something else that might not be in your best interest. Linda wants to know, if I take a good quality B complex, would that be enough B5 to overcome some of the problems I've had? Been stressed since a little kid, gray streak at 24, Hashimoto's. Obviously have a bunch of nutrient deficiencies that I'm becoming more aware of. So depends on the B complex, Linda. Again, if we're talking about just kind of, let's just say aggressive doses of B5, aggressive meaning kind of more intense use, right? So not like the United States or the FDA daily recommended dose, but kind of more of an intense use with B5. So we'd look at, 250 to 500 milligrams per day. If you're struggling with a deficiency, this is kind of a starting point to kind of look at. And so in some cases, maybe more, in some cases, maybe less. So it just depends on what your B complex has in it. Okay, let's see here. So Brenda wants to know, I heard calcium also affects hair graying. Is this a component? Not so much. The biggest nutrients that can prematurely cause graying of the hair, vitamin B5 and vitamin B12 are the two I see the most in people, but both of those are pretty common. Wanda wants to know foods that are rich in vitamin B5. I think we covered that. Questions about, Anita wants questions about my thyroid. I have a nodule on the right side. I had a CT scan, 2 ultrasounds, and a biopsy. Doc says there's calcification. And blood flow that shows from the ultrasound biopsy says 50% suspicious. Boy, that's kind of a monster question, Anita. Probably not a good place in this forum because it's just too specific and too in-depth. I would say if you're doubting the advice that your doctor's giving you, you might just consider getting a second opinion. But this is probably not the forum for that second opinion. So whether or not you should remove your thyroid, again, I don't want to lead the scale or tip the scale one direction or another. We just don't know each other well enough. Okay, let's see. Next question here. So Nancy wants to know how many people, I guess you mean how many per year that I see people with gluten sensitivity. I probably, in my practice, I see 350, 400 people a year new. But in a year, that doesn't, so that's how many people I see directly. How many people are actually gluten sensitive maybe is a deeper question to ask. And I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that question. I've seen scientific estimates anywhere from 1% to up to 40% of the population. So I think it's a much more prevalent problem. But I also think glyphosate and Roundup and pesticides and genetic hybridization, and there are a number of other factors, the way people eat, the way they take care of themselves today, that tend to lead toward aggressive responses to grains that even above and beyond gluten. For those of you who want to know more about gluten and grain-free diets, you can read No Grain, No Pain. It's my book, my best-selling book. You can pick that up. It's published by Simon & Schuster Touchstone, and you can pick it up in any major bookstore. Chucho says, if you have B12 methylation issue, would that contribute to B5 absorption trouble? No, not necessarily. I mean, indirectly, maybe yes, but not directly. Derek, yes, this is live. If you got a question, chime in. What test do you recommend to check for B5 deficiency? I think I answered that earlier, but I'll repeat. Lymphocyte proliferation is the best way to detect that. Rosemarie, what do you mean AFS? I want to make sure I'm using the right acronym for your question. So you say you have a moderate stage of AFS. So delineate what that means to me. When is a good time to take B5? That's what Soon's question is. Soon, the good time to take B5 is breakfast, lunch, or dinner. There's not like a better time. So it's not like better absorbed at a particular time. It's not like better serving you at taking it at a different time. It's best to take it with food so that the food that you're eating mixes with that supplemental B5, and it causes a stimulation, gastric acid secretion, stimulation of pancreatic enzyme and intestinal enzyme dumping, so you get better absorption from it. So Barb wants to know, is a B150 supplement sufficient? So it depends. If the B150 is referring to 150 milligrams of B5, it might be depending on the individual, but it also might not be depending on the individual. So again, it just depends. Been supplementing methylcobalamin because I understand it's poorly absorbed. Methylcobalamin is actually is absorbed actually quite well. It's one of the better absorbed forms and activated forms of vitamin B12, not necessarily B5. Yeah, B5 has been shown to help with hair thinning as well. There have been some research studies that show that B5 helps to reduce hair thinning, and it helps to slow down hair loss. Lymphocyte proliferation, again, I know not a lot of you keep asking about the test, but lymphocyte proliferation is the name of that test. Let's see here. When would you get raised platelet count? Would food do that? It can, Olympia. I mean, one of the side effects of a person with gluten sensitivity can be elevation in platelet counts. I've seen that happen. I've also seen it be the other direction, where people can have low platelet counts as a result of gluten sensitivity. So B5, though, not so much. B5 doesn't have much to do with platelets, although B5 is important for producing hemoglobin in your red blood cells. So you do need vitamin B5 to make adequate functioning red blood cells. Can B5 help Hashimoto thyroid symptoms? I'm gluten-free for 5 years. B5, again, it's not so much that it helps hypothyroid, it's that it helps your body metabolize carb, fat, and protein into energy better, which is in part dependent on your thyroid hormone production. But so typically B5 is important to generate energy, and that energy generation is important to maintain the health of your thyroid. But you need B5 for the energy, and it's not so much that you develop a low thyroid if you don't have adequate B5. Now, there are nutrients that can cause thyroid deficiency, and so as an example, iodine, probably the most well-studied. Iodine deficiency can cause a low thyroid, but so can vitamin C and vitamin B2 and vitamin B12 and vitamin A and vitamin D. So too can selenium and iron deficiency. So there are a number of nutrients. If you want to learn more about the thyroid and vitamins and minerals, you should watch my crash course on the thyroid and the nutrient functions associated with thyroid function. Rajit wants to know, I have a friend who has lupus. Would B5 help? Possibly, through the same connection here, Rajit. So remember, rheumatoid arthritis, research shows that B5 helps people with rheumatoid arthritis have less pain and inflammation. These diseases, lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, are very, very close. Both of them are autoimmune tissue disorders. And so it's very possible that she might get help. But again, I would say your friend shouldn't be guessing at whether B5 could help or not with something like lupus. Like getting into the care of a qualified functional practitioner would be the best advice I could give there. Let's see, scroll up just a little. So would B5 help with thrombocytopenia? Again, I think I answered that a minute ago. Not so much that I have seen either in my practice or in medical literature. A book I just read, Donna wants to know a book I just read, has a program to reverse Alzheimer's. It sounds very much like functional medicine approach. So it depends. So the question is, can you successfully see somebody with Alzheimer's start to regain cognitive function and reverse cognitive decline? You can, but it depends on what stage they're in. So you have to be real careful because there's a lot of people out there that promise the world, but they can't, my advice would be anybody who promises you anything, no doctor, no healthcare practitioner can ever predict the future. None of them should ever be able to guarantee an outcome. Like, that's a very unethical thing to do. They may be able to speculate, they may be able to postulate as to what they think might happen, but they should never be guaranteeing an outcome. And with Alzheimer's, what we see in this functional field, and I know several experts who deal and treat functionally Alzheimer's, is we see early stage. So if they can catch it in an early enough stage, yes, you can see cognitive decline reversing. You can see improvements in mental clarity, brain fog, focus, and memory. But if it's late stage Alzheimer's, not so much. So the key there is, if you find your mind is going, get in functionally with somebody as quickly as you possibly can to be able to have a greater level of success. Okay. Thyroid nodules. Jolene wants to know for thyroid. Depending on what's causing them, Jolene, thyroid nodules can be caused by a number of different things. For a lot of people, thyroid nodules are an autoimmune process caused by gluten. It's one of those very common associations. For other people, thyroid nodules can be caused by iodine deficiency, can be caused by selenium deficiency. So again, just depends on the nodule, depends on the person. Okay. Is it better? I think we're running out of time here. I think we're out of time. I'll answer one more. Is it better to do a B5 only supplement or a high B5 in your B complex pill? It depends. Both. Sometimes both. Sometimes a B complex it has all the other Bs, so you want to use it for the support of the other Bs, but it might not have adequate quantities of B5 per se. So it just depends on the level of intensity that you're trying to get from that supplement. But again, some of your B complexes are going to have 100 milligrams a day, and I just said that 250 to 500 is kind of a starting point for an intense use of vitamin B5. So it depends on the B complex vitamin too. So again, we have a B5 formulation. We have a couple different formulations. If you're looking for a gluten-free supplement that you want to take to play with this a little bit, we have what's called B Complete, which is a complete multivitamin or multi-B vitamin. Okay, but then we also have one that is higher dose B5, which is just strictly, it's called Ultra B5. So you can look that up in our online store as well. But either one of those or both of them simultaneously, again, very safe for use even at higher doses. But again, I don't recommend going it alone if you're going to start shooting, into the gram range of vitamin B5 on a daily basis. Okay, so that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Again, if you're new to the show, make sure that you subscribe. You can do that by clicking the bell icon. You can also subscribe to our newsletter if you come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. You can sign up for the newsletter there. If you do, we'll send you a free starter kit and survival guide on how to go gluten-free and what you might want to consider about grain in your diet. And as always, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Our goal here is to save 100 million lives. That's the goal. And that we're doing that through outreach. So the more people we can reach, the more lives we can change. If you find the show valuable, if you find the show and the information helpful, I ask you to do one thing, and that is don't be selfish with it. Don't be stingy. Share it. But type in hashtag save 100 million lives for me. That's how people are finding us, is through that hashtag. So make sure you type that in. And as always, thanks for spending your Monday evening with me. I'll see you next Monday, same time, for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.